when that doesn't happen correctly, whoo-wee, can that it'll make you want to pull your hair out. And okay, yeah, I mean that's a rabbit hole, and maybe out of all of it, it might be the most frustrating. Actually, I think that it probably is. I mean, coming from the concept of now, I guess, the question you're posing is that now I know myself, now I have proof, I guess, to some extent that there's demand for me and the thing that I really want to talk about and that I'm excited about. And now it's time to actually drive traffic, meaningful traffic, and traffic that'll convert. When that doesn't happen correctly, whoo-wee, can that it'll make you want to pull your hair out. And I don't blame anyone else for being frustrated in that. I can speak firsthand about being frustrated in that, and quite honestly, the only way that we were able to figure it out is just good old-fashioned, unadulterated stubbornness, just battling through it and not giving up. And I mean, obviously some willingness to want to have to do it is part of the stubbornness, right? And a knack for it, if you will. But I mean, in hindsight, had we hired someone from the start, assuming we could find someone that we felt good about, but if we were able to hire someone from the start, the beginning of our process of driving traffic would have dramatically changed. There's obviously organic traffic, which is mainly going to be through the social channels, as well as I mentioned, I think, I did on the last question, we were talking about meetup.com, doing live stuff where you're engaging with the community and things like that. Then there's the paid side. But either way, if you, let's say, as an example, because I've done this, where you're going to do a live class. Like my first meetup that I did, 5 people showed up, and I'm lucky, 5 people showed up, and that was because a friend of a colleague sent out an email for me that of people that were on their list, right? And but I didn't bring anyone there myself, meaning that was someone else's list, and that relationship that I had allowed for butts and chairs to actually happen. But I've heard story upon story upon story about getting butts and chairs being the ultimate struggle if people do want to go that route, or just getting people to get paid traffic to work with Facebook ads, with pay-per-click ads, and so on and so forth. Also have been here spending a good amount of money per month on driving traffic, and it coming not quite as much as I expected, right? Or, again, there's story upon story upon story for this. It was even worse for me, though, when it wasn't digital. On the traditional side, it was worse. That frustration was, I didn't have a passion and a stubbornness to figure that out. And so, I had enough that it was frustrating, but I didn't have enough to see it through quite like we have on the digital side. But geez, now the next part after that is painstakingly, I guess at this point I just like to laugh about it, because otherwise what else are you going to do, right? Learn from your lessons, which is once you get traffic, how to get them to turn into customers. So, having conversations with them and this and that and the other, and then knowing that you are potentially a good fit, but then not actually getting anyone to be a customer of yours because they use you find out later they use some random whomever. That'll make you want to have steam coming out of your ears. So I will not sit here and tell anybody that it's easy, because it's not. But it is definitely a lot easier with a bunch of experience. So there is zero chances that I will ever say that it's just some slam dunk, right? Because it's not. And anyone that tells you that it is either a miracle worker or crazy, because it's just not a thing. It's not a thing. So everyone's voice, everyone's ideal customer, everyone's location, all the variables are they're vast, and they all contribute to how this goes down. So we get a kick out of it now, though, you know. So I look forward to these challenges. Obviously, if we didn't have any wins to have momentum to feed off of, if we didn't have those wins to feed off of, I have to say that I don't know that it would be, I wouldn't be sitting here right now talking to you about it, I can say that. But that having that is a big deal, and it's really fun. So yeah, that's what we like to do. Help people find their voice through organic traffic. You know, one thing I haven't talked about yet in regards to traffic is the sales funnel side, you know, on the conversion side. I know you've heard of it, but maybe someone that's going to listen to this might not. But you know, let's say you take 100 people that you think are your ideal customer, and you drive them to I'll call it more of a vanilla traditional website, where there's a whole bunch of options for them to explore and learn about you and this, all kinds of stuff, right? Say there's 10 options versus you send them to a place where there's just one or two, and those one or two are, you know, strategically known by you, obviously, because you're involved in the sales funnel creating process, where they have an opportunity to work with you. And keep in mind now that this traffic is traffic that you've driven there because you want them. We've targeted an audience, right? An audience that makes sense to you to want to do business with. So if those folks get there and then they bounce, there's a good chance that they weren't a good fit. But if they stay there, their options are clear as to how you want to work with them. And so it's not always easy to figure this out, because again, it's different based on location. And gosh, like someone in Atlanta versus someone in another major, say Denver versus say Minneapolis or another metropolitan area. What's interesting is how people, the psychographical information, how people engage, what their behaviors are based on wording and pictures and all this stuff is, you know, there's some things that trend, but then there's other things that just need to be figured out. And so having gone through that process a bunch of times at this point is super helpful. Obviously, it's pretty obvious, right? But it's super frustrating here. Or I've been there, but we hear stories that are like people just want to pull their hair out, and I don't blame them one bit. And I guess the final piece about the traffic is, you know, follow up. You know, CRM build outs and all sorts of crazy stuff along those lines, or within chat bots. It's pretty interesting how it's all going, and the money is in the follow up. It's not just some baloney statement. It really truly is. You know, when you think about how noisy it is out there in terms of people being inundated with things, right? And the ability for them to be distracted, staying in front of them, when the aha moment of how big of a deal it is for people to be inundated, it's pretty clear that staying in front of folks and continuing to add value and so on and so forth it's essential. And so speaking of that, though, that's why it's so important, we believe, and we've seen, to have your foundation right. Like know yourself and know your favorite customer, because then it's not hard to create value and add value because you're excited about it. And so, I mean, you can probably just tell by the conviction in my voice that is a big deal. And when we find folks that are struggling to do that, it's because they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to add value based on X subject or X neighborhood or X demographic or so on and so forth. But when they figure out what it is they're pumped to talk about, it all just seems to work together, and follow-up becomes natural, right? So anyway, yeah, does that answer your question? I hope it does. So thanks. Yeah.